All right, let's talk about the man with one of the most enticing voices of our generation, in my opinion. This Dutch newspaper, NRC, described it perfectly. King Krule sounds like a hurricane with frayed edge. We also have this Belgian music website. They described it as intimate chaos, and I would like to add organized to that description. I think King Krule sounds like intimate, organized chaos.
Don't you worry about it.
King Krule, aka Archie Marshall, aka Zoo Kid, aka Edgar the Beatmaker, aka Edgar the Breathtaker, and aka DJ JD Sports, is an artist that will really surprise you when you realize he's only 29 years old. He's turning 30 this August, but seems to have lived multiple musical lives already. Like when I first stumbled upon his music a couple years ago, I only knew of his work under the name King Krule. But then I fell down his beautiful musical rabbit hole that makes you understand why artists like Frank Ocean and Earl Sweatshirt really want to work with him, and why Travis Scott is such a big fan of him. Archie started recording and releasing his first work back in 2010 when he was just 16 years old under the name Zoo Kid. But he was already glued to his guitar way before that. I don't know if you've seen this video of little Archie, who won a contest that got him to play at Glastonbury at just 14 years old.
Everyone's got its frown. Everyone wears its frown.
He released a couple singles and this mixtape called UFO Wave, which contains this song, Out Getting Ribs, which is, wow, if you're a King Krule or Archie or Zoo Kid fan, you know this song. The first time I heard this song and I found out he was only 17 when he wrote and recorded this, I was blown away, to say the least, because how does such a soulful voice, singing lyrics that you would expect coming from someone that has lived and smoked for at least a couple decades, come out of a 17-year-old boy?
I've been broken down.
So not long after dropping his first music under the name Zoo Kid, he adopted the name King Krule. And the name King Krule is inspired by Elvis Presley's movie, King Krule. But what is funny is that in one of his most recent interviews, King Krule has said that he's been thinking about dropping the King part of his name and just go by Krule, because right now he finds the King part a little bit cringy. So, you know, who knows? We might have to add a new name to his long list of monikers. In 2011, he released his first self-titled EP under the name King Krule, which contains one of my favorite songs of all time, 363N63 or 363N63. But there is crack in this song. One commenter said it perfectly. This is what bliss sounds like. Hard agree. And what I didn't know is that apparently Mac Miller wore the EP cover on his t-shirt for a live performance music video. So this commenter said even Mac Miller was an OG, which is apparently true. 2 years after that EP, King Krule released his debut album 6 Feet Beneath the Moon that also contains Out Getting Ribs, which he initially released under Zoo Kid, and till this day one of his most popular songs. This album was crowned an instant indie classic by many, and where most artists would jump on the momentum and drop a sophomore album as soon as possible, King Krule took, willingly or unwillingly, who knows, a different path. So instead of dropping his second album under the name King Krule, he released a project under his real name, Archie Marshall. A New Place to Drown, released in 2015. In the album review for A New Place to Drown, Pitchfork made a great observation. They said the work of tracking what he does now has fallen to hardcore faithful fans, which seems like a smart long-term survival strategy and a sensible reaction to early career hype. Have your visibility, double your productivity, and wait for the universe to catch up. Even though Pitchfork makes a great point, I don't think Archie made this album with that strategy in mind. He's also said that he decided to drop this project under a different name because when you listen to it, you can just tell that the sounds are quite different. So Archie sees A New Place to Drown more as a hip-hop album instead of like the dark, alternative, jazzy sound his work under the name King Krule has. But in another interview with The Standard, he's also said that at the time that he was working on A New Place to Drown, the work didn't feel worthy for the name King Krule. So under the name Archie Marshall it went. What I thought was really cool about A New Place to Drown is that with this project, he didn't only express himself through his music, but also released a 10-minute documentary, a 208-page book, and visual art, and he worked on this project together with his brother Jack. So now we have Zoo Kid, King Krule, and Archie Marshall. So you might think, okay, now he's ready for album number 2 under King Krule, right? Nope. Meet Edgar the Beatmaker.
I'm a celestial piece arisen in lunacy.
Or Breathtaker. At first I was a bit confused because his Boiler Room set says Breathtaker while Bandcamp and most of his YouTube videos say Beatmaker.
AKA so many AKAs.
What's cool to know is that under this moniker he not only worked with Mount Kimby but also with Frank Ocean and one of my favorites, Earl Sweatshirt. Even Kanye West reached out to him, by the way, to work together. But to that invite he said no because it's hard for him to work with or for an artist under pressure. Like with an Earl Sweatshirt, it was an organic process. They were hanging together, just jamming for a couple of weeks, and then he just happened to produce Death Whistle for Earl Sweatshirt.
two cards, blackjack, both aces is lit.
This is also something he said in an interview, by the way. I'm telling it like I know him. I don't. That pressure that made him say no to Kanye is also one of the reasons his sophomore album didn't come out for so long. The effortless inspiration he had with his debut was nowhere to be found for his second record. So the title of the second album, The Ooze, partially represents the process, because this album slowly but surely got oozed out of King Krule over time. In an interview with The Standard, he also mentioned how the addition of Ignacio Salvadores, his saxophonist, and spoken word artist Beatriz Ortiz Mendez helped him to get the ooze back on track. Finishing and releasing that album in 2017 was a big triumph for King Krule, and luckily the album was received very well. Since then, we've never had to wait that long for a new King Krule album. 3 years after the ooze, he released Man Alive, which is, I think, I wanted to say my favorite album, but I would be lying if I said that. After a year, he released his life album, You Heat Me Up, Cool Me Down. And 2 years after that, he released his most recent album, Space Heavy, which I had on repeat, especially the song Seaforth. I think it was my #1 song in my Spotify rap last year. Not I think, I'm sure. That was my #1 song in my Spotify rap last year. His latest album, Space Heavy, was largely created during the long train rides from London to Liverpool, where his daughter lives. During those train rides, he has read a lot, listened to music, and wrote lyrics. And in an interview with this Belgian news outlet Buzz, he said that the album title, Space Heavy, was inspired by that space between those two places and all the emotions that fill up that space. Some critics say that you can hear the influence his daughter's birth has had on him, saying Space Heavy sounds a lot lighter than his previous work, less angry. But that is something Archie doesn't really agree with, because in his interview with The Standard, he said, I still feel that there's a deep anger inside a lot of the composition and a deep sadness that's there. But the thing he's most proud of when it comes to this record are the melodies and the riffs, because in an interview with Clash, he said he's never been great at guitar, but he feels like he's been getting better over time. So this record is mostly about the relationship between him and the instrument. Let's go back to the moment where I said that I had Space Heavy on repeat. That is because another piece of work has recently taken over its place. Mount Kimby's latest album, The Sunset Violent. And of course, my favorite songs on that record being the ones featuring King Krule.
I can feel the tight jagged details of the floral black lace that stretch between cold fire.
Since both Mount Kimby and King Krule were on the lineup for Glastonbury this year, people already wondered if King Krule would join him on stage, which he did. Speaking of Glastonbury, it was pretty full circle to see King Krule perform on such a big stage with his daughter, considering the first time he performed at Glastonbury, he was only a child himself.
I'll make my last request.
So, what is it about King Krule that I love so much? Aside from his intriguing, gut-wrenching voice that cuts right through you and his beautiful lyrics, I just love how he has managed to combine some of my favorite genres, jazz, alternative, indie, rock, and hip-hop, and create his own distinctive sound. It's that versatility in his music that proves that this man really loves music, doesn't matter which genre. And because of that versatility, many artists, doesn't matter which genre, want to work with him. There are not many artists my notifications are on for on Spotify, but King Krule is definitely one of them. So, you can imagine my excitement when I got the notification that he blessed us with his most recent EP, Shh. I already counted us lucky for his contributions to Mount Kimby's album, and I assumed we would have to wait a couple years for some new work, which I would happily do. But then we got this. In the beginning, the opening track, Achtung, hope I'm pronouncing it right, was my favorite. But now that I'm more in a mellow mood, I think it's Will Shark.
Looks like we meet again. That goes round and round.
But there might be more King Krule on the horizon. In that interview with Buzz, he said that aside from music, he also has ambitions to finally finish writing a book, a poetry book, if I'm not mistaken, preferably before he turns 30. In his interview with The Standard, he then said he's ready to finally feel appreciated by some kind of pomposity, some kind of intellect that doesn't appreciate him yet, and he just doesn't want to cheat and make songs. He wants to make poetry. And with him turning 30 in August this year, we might also be getting a book, a poetry book, written by King Krule before the end of the summer. Quick PSA, this video was recorded in July. Sadly, there's still no King Krule book, but who knows, that might change before the end of this year. Keeping my hopes up. I gotta say, unlike the Frank Ocean fans, us King Krule fans are well fed.